Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Berger, and she's here today to share with us her new book, The Road to Power, Fast Food for the Soul. Now, Barbara was born in America, and she's the best-selling author of 15 self-empowerment books, which have been translated into 30 languages. Now, Barbara lives in Copenhagen, Denmark, where she works as a coach, helping people around the globe into alignment with their own true power. So let's welcome to the show, Barbara Berger.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. I mean, my goodness, your book is getting such great reviews. You have to be so proud.
I am. It's so wonderful that so many people have been so inspired by this book. And I have gotten so many hundreds and hundreds of emails and letters from people from around the world telling me that this was the book that did it for them, that helped them change their lives, get their lives back on track. So it's very, very, very exciting for me.
Well, why don't you share with our listeners what inspired you to write this book?
Well, before I talk about that, let me just say what the book is about briefly, because this is a book about the power of the mind. It's called The Road to Power. So we're talking about understanding the amazing powers of our own minds and how we can use this power more wisely. So that's what this book is about. And of course, it grew out of my own experience, my own suffering, my own challenges, and starting to understand the amazing power of our minds and how this determines our experience and how we can use the focus of our attention more wisely. When I started to understand the mechanism myself, then, of course, I wanted to share this wonderful information with everyone else. So that's how this book came about.
And so when you look at the inspiration behind this book, was it really just the work that you've been doing during this time, and it's something that, you know, people that you're working with really needed to know? What was that thread there for you?
Well, actually, if you really would like the story of how it came to me, the book came to me in a very, very unexpected way. At the time that it came to me, I was a single mother, 3 children, and I had a very stressful job, and I was working really, really hard. And I was so stressed out of my mind that I decided that I had to take 2 or 3 weeks off. And so I took 3 weeks off, and I told everyone that I was going far, far away, but I didn't. I didn't go anywhere. And instead, now I live in Copenhagen, Denmark, and north of this beautiful city, Copenhagen, there are a lot of beaches and woods. And so for every day for 3 weeks, I went north to the beaches and to the woods, and I went by myself, and I prayed and I meditated, and my whole system calmed down. And by the end of the 3 weeks, actually on the very last day of the 3 weeks, I was sitting on the beach in the evening, completely alone, and it was as if I heard a voice. I got knocked on the head, and I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Barbara, you're going to write a book. Take out a piece of paper." And of course, I've never had an experience like this before, so I was kind of shocked. So I took out a piece of paper, and actually this voice dictated the whole book to me. The voice said, the name of the book is going to be The Road to Power, and the first chapter is going to be The Power of, and then it said the name of the chapter, and it's going to be about this, and the next chapter is, and the whole book was dictated to me. And then when it got done dictating the book, it said, go home and write it. And I thought, okay. And so I did. I went home and I wrote all this information down, and it was a very easy book to write. It just sort of flowed through me and came out. And then I sent it to my publisher in Denmark, here where I live. I had written several books before, and I was quite a well-known writer before this book came to me. And my publisher rejected it and said that it was way too simplistic. Nobody would believe this stuff, that it was fast food for the soul. That's how I actually got the subtitle. It was the criticism of the publisher. And then I decided that, then I sent it to some other publishers. Nobody would publish it. And so I decided that since this was such an interesting book and the way that it came to me, that the universe delivered it to me, that I would publish it myself. And then I figured, well, I'll print 1,000 copies, and if nobody buys it, at least I can give it away to my friends. But at the same time, I've been working all my life as a coach and a mentor. One of the people I was mentoring was Denmark's most famous woman writer. She was in the hospital with cancer, and I gave her the manuscript to this book because I thought the information in the book would help her. And she lay in the hospital, and she read it, and interesting the way the universe works, the synchronicity. The day that I got the 1,000 copies from the printer, she came out of the hospital, and then she wrote a full-page article about how fantastic this book was, which came on the front page of the Sunday section of the biggest newspaper in Denmark. And then it was like, okay. And so then the book became a bestseller here in Scandinavia, and now it's published all over the world in 30 languages. So this book has its own life. It has its own magic, and it finds people, and it just changes their lives. It does.
Well, it's so interesting, the journey that, different books take, and I'm so glad that you took the time to share that with us, because I think a lot of times there's so much magic that comes with that journey that people really don't understand. It's like, this book has its own energy, it's got its own journey.
Exactly.
And it's doing what it's supposed to do.
I mean, in some ways I feel like it just came through me, but it has its own life. I mean, the people who find it, it's just so interesting, the kind of letters I get. People tell me they, it fell out of a bookshelf on their head, or they saw it on a table, or, I mean, it is exactly as you say. It has its own power. So, yeah.
The book was, because it sounds like it really was kind of channeled to you in many ways.
Yes, exactly. That's what I think today. I mean, at the time, I wasn't familiar with channeling. I didn't know about that mechanism. But when I look back at it today, I think the fact that I had made myself so quiet and empty after having been so stressed, that I was sort of I had created that empty space where information and energy could come to me that was very pure and very clear, which is why actually one of the chapters in the book is about, there's several chapters about this, but about the power of releasing and making space in your life and opening yourself up to new inspiration. So that's actually what I did then, without even consciously being aware that I was making myself ready for that.
It sounds like you were going through the process of this book, and during the journey, you talk in your book about, taking control of your words and the power. And it's really interesting because a lot of times people don't really understand how important that is.
Yeah, that's one of also the very powerful chapters in the book. So in other words, the basic premise, just again, so our listeners can, the basic premise, that sort of the theme of the whole book, is that the power of our attention, the way we focus our minds, that is what determines our experience. You could say that reality is what it is. I mean, things happen, people show up in your lives, but that each one of us, the way that we relate to, the way that we hold what's happening, the way that we interpret it, that's what determines our experience. So in other words, in every situation, we always have a choice about how we're going to hold what's happening. In other words, are we focused on, I say, are you problem-oriented or are you solution-oriented? In other words, are you focusing on everything that can go wrong because this person showed up or because you're in this situation? Or are you focusing on, how you can make it better, the potential, all the possibilities, all the good in the situation? So this whole book is about, every chapter are different examples and different ways of learning to understand how to take control of your focus. So that's sort of the key theme of the whole book.
Is the focus.
Yeah, because the book is about that, becoming more and more aware that each one of us, we are the only thinkers in our mind. And so that means that we have much more power than we believe, because we are the choice maker in every situation. In other words, how are we using our focus? What are we focusing on right now? And if you start to, I do coach people every day. I work as a coach. And so I can see that most people are not that aware. I mean, everybody's heard about this stuff, but they're not really practicing it. They're not really that aware about how subtle it is. As you said before, if we just listen to what people are saying, the stories we are telling, they are so revealing. There is a chapter in the book called The Power of Affirmation. And in other words, that whole chapter is about noticing what we are affirming, what we are saying out loud. Are we, again, you can, when you listen to people talk, sometimes you think, well, it makes perfect sense the way their lives are. People who complain a lot usually have a lot to complain about. They go together, whereas people who are praiseful, enthusiastic, passionate about stuff, they usually have a lot to be enthusiastic about and passionate about. So it's very interesting to notice that it's not accidental.
Yeah, it's interesting because you also talk about this in your book, and we were just kind of touching on that a minute ago, when we take control about what it is that we say, how powerful that is, because it changes everything.
Exactly.
Well, and you kind of touched on this a little bit ago when you talked about the power of release. Why don't you expand on that for our listeners? Because I think a lot of times when people think about release, they're like, oh, I've released everything, but they may still hold grudges, or, or maybe they're not quite, quite there yet to forgive a friend, did something to them, or a parent,
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, since I work as a therapist and coach and talk to people every day, as far as I can see, we're all carrying around so much excess baggage, old stuff, things that are weighing us down, that are blocking the flow of energy in our lives and so on. So to become more conscious about, well, you could say, for example, people in your lives, the relationships where, say, for example, you had a good friend and it really worked for many years, but you've changed or you've grown apart. And so to be able to let go of people and bless them with love, but not to feel that you have to hold on to stuff, because when you let go of things that no longer serve you, you also make space for new good to come into your life. So it's letting go and releasing is an amazing tool. Also just in terms of, like cleaning up your house or cleaning out your closets. Also physically throwing stuff out, giving things away. It's amazing what happens when we do stuff like that. First of all, if you clean out old junk or a closet or something, you feel actually how much energy you stirred up in the old, and then when you've done it, you just feel better. So I highly recommend emotional releasing, physical releasing, mental release, all levels if one can, as much as possible.
To really kind of dive into that, and how important is that? When you were writing this book and doing that channeling, was there anything that came up that surprised you?
Not really. In the sense, it surprised me in the sense that that the information was presented so clearly. I had been working on these things and had been familiar with a lot of it, but the force of it, the clarity of it, the explanation, the way it's presented. When you read the book, you will see. You've looked at it. I know it has a force behind it, which is so undeniable. It just sort of moves along.
Yeah.
So I think that was the most amazing thing about the experience for me, that it was delivered to me, it was packaged, it was clear, just the writing of it was so easy too. It just, there it is.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when people do channeling. Sometimes they're surprised by the information that shows up, or it just already resonates with them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, of course." that makes sense.
Mm. Well, I understand what you're saying, because later on, I had led a meditation group for many years. Every week, people came, and there, to my great surprise, I did start to channel in the way that you're talking about now. I was the leader of this meditation group, and in the beginning, it was, just guiding the people about breathing and relaxing and focusing their attention in different ways. But to my great surprise, I sometimes in the beginning, I would start talking about things, and then it was, as you say, that I could talk about things that I had no knowledge of. And it wasn't that I was asleep or anything. I was fully aware of what I was saying, but it was like, oh, that's really interesting. Where did that come from? So again, I sort of developed, once I started to understand that I had the ability to do that, I allowed myself to go with it even more. And so more information came to me. I've written several other books, and one of my books is actually all the information that I got from the channelings.
There's one, I'm sure there are a few in here that people are looking, gosh, there's power, there's information behind this, there's, this could be powerful in my life. And one of them that came up, and I think a lot of people would be a little bit surprised by, is the power of no. And I'd love for you to explain that for our listeners.
Well, that chapter is about, again, if we know that we are the choice maker in our lives, if we know that we are the only one who can control the focus of our attention. So the power of no, that chapter is about refusing to give our attention to gossip, for example, or, saying no to gossip, saying no to critical thoughts about other people, saying no to watching violent movies, saying no to, so in other words, that it's not just what we say yes to, but it's also that we should exercise discernment in our lives, because again, what we focus our attention on grows in our experience. Plus, what we focus our attention on, that's the frequency that we're on. And depending on the frequency that we're on, each one of us is kind of like a radio transmitter. We're sending a signal out to the universe, and we attract more of the same frequency. So we attract people, circumstances, situations that match our frequency. So if we're on a low frequency, which is negative thinking, gossip, violence, whatever, then we will attract more that matches that. And that's not really very wise. So the power of no is again, it's that we're the choice maker, and that we really need to understand that it's every choice. It's every now moment.
Well, and what a powerful thing that is, too, because when we're and we have choices, I mean, it really takes that whole victim mentality out of that. Exactly.
So again, that's also a very, very important aspect of all this. So in other words, I'm not saying that, and the book doesn't say that we don't have challenges, that we don't face difficult situations or difficult people or whatever. We all face that, but we have the choice of how we're going to relate to it. So in other words, what is it that I can do in this situation? What can I learn in this situation? How you could say how we can turn lemons into lemonade. In other words, why is this coming to me? What's the growth here? What's the learning? How can I evolve more? So everything can be framed in that way. And that helps us also to deal more wisely often with difficult situations.
Well, and so I know in your book you talk about examples of exercises that people can use.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share a couple of those with our listeners, because I'm sure that they're going, gosh, I want to start using some of this in my life now.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the different, I have a lot of affirmations, because in other words, we talked about before the power of the spoken word, that what we say out loud is actually what we're affirming for ourselves and for our families and for our friends. So to start to work on changing what we say, and I guess one of the favorite affirmations that's in the book is not even one that I developed. It's a universal mantra that's actually from 1800 and in the late 1800s. There was a French doctor who developed this mantra, which I'm now going to say, and which I have used so much with so many clients and so many people who have had amazing results with this affirmation. And it goes like this: every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. This doctor, his name was Émile Coué, this French doctor who developed that. He was a medical doctor, and he had people who came to him with all kinds of illnesses, sicknesses, and so on. And he discovered, or he found out, that there was something deeper going on, and he wanted to help people reprogram their subconscious. And so he developed this affirmation: every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. And he gave it to all his patients. It didn't matter what problem they came with. They had to say this, and his prescription was to say this with feeling out loud 15 times in a row, at least 3 times a day. And so he started doing this with people, and now millions of people all over the world have used this for many, many generations. And so I would highly recommend that if you want a universal pick-me-up, that you try saying this out loud with feeling 3 times a day and see what happens in your life. I have had people who have had so many amazing turnarounds just by using this one affirmation. And you have to think about, first of all, you can't say every day. You have to say, if you think about what it says, every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. It's such a cool affirmation because it's open-ended. It's not specific. It doesn't say how. It doesn't say, but it's just sort of that flow of every day and every way, I am getting better and better. You can't really do it 15 times in a row without feeling better. So that's a very good example of the kind of affirmations that you'll find in the book.
Well, and what a powerful example that is, because it really does shift the energy and move people into a state of greater positivity for their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know, for example, I had, well, actually, one of my sons also, who was very depressed once. He was so depressed, and I remember he came to me. He was 19 years old, and I said, well, why don't you try this affirmation? And he did. He really went overboard. He just said it constantly all day long, from morning to evening. He didn't allow himself to think of anything else, but he totally turned his life around by doing that for a couple of months. He regained his health. He had been very sick. He got a new job. His girlfriend who left him came back. I mean, everything just, his life was just back on track. And the only thing he did was constantly say this. So yeah, I have a lot of stories of people who have really done good stuff, good work with this.
And really changed their lives. Well, and it's interesting because I know in your book you talk about how our mental states control our bodies. And I'd love for you to expand on that for our listeners, because you talk about how this also impacts our health.
Well, one of the other basic premises of the book is that God is all and God is good. In other words, that there's a greater universal intelligence who created all of life, including us and including our bodies, our health. And so this all-powerful universal intelligence is here and is working in and through us, but with our negative thinking and the way we've been programmed, a lot of us, that we block the natural goodness from doing its healing work in and through our bodies. So I mean, I've written a lot of other books where I go in more detail and explain how this mechanism works, but briefly you could say that the great universal intelligence, the intelligence of our physical bodies, if you think about it, that, for example, your heart is beating by itself. Your heart is beating all night long. You don't sit up in bed and tell your heart to beat. It does it by itself, and your food is getting digested by itself, and your lungs are, so the body is doing itself. There's a greater intelligence that created it, and that's running it right now. And we all know, for example, that, if you cut your finger and out in the kitchen you're making food and you cut your finger and it bleeds a bit and you put a bandage on it, you take the bandage off in a couple of days, the finger it's grown back together. You don't sit there all day long and tell the cells in your body to do that. So the body has a self-regulating, self-healing intelligence that if we align ourselves with that, and if we affirm it and we believe in it, then we allow it to work much more powerfully in and through us. So that's this whole thing about how our mental focus, how our mental states can either positively or negatively affect the body's ability to take care of itself.
Well, and what just a great example that is, because people can really visualize that and understand the body is going to do what the body is going to do, and but we can impact it also with our words and our
Well, there's another chapter where there's in this book that was called The Power of No Age, which is also about this mechanism of how we program ourselves, how we have these conditioned responses and ideas about the so-called aging process. And that chapter is called The Power of No Age, and it starts off with the question, who would you be if you didn't know your age? And I find that when I work with people, we are so programmed to believe that the body's going to be like this when you're 20, and then it's going to be like this when you're 30, and then when you're 40, and then when you're 50, and when you're 60. So we have a whole sort of built-in set of expectations with every age, which is also very limiting. Because the reality is, if you look at people age very differently. And people, so there's some other factor besides the passage of time. But because we identify or are programmed to believe that the body declines with the passage of time, then life becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So again, it's the power of our focus. How are we using the power of our minds in terms of looking at the body as we pass through time? So again, all of this stuff is so fascinating, because once we get a whiff of how much more freedom we could have, it's very intoxicating, I find. And again, as far as I'm concerned, this is what self-empowerment is about. Self-empowerment is about taking your power back, about understanding that you're far more powerful than you have been brought up to believe. That's really good news.
That is great news. And for a lot of people, it allows them to start taking that power back, start living a more empowered life. And I agree with you. When people start talking about ages, I don't pay attention to the numbers.
Good.
I'm more focused on how I feel and what I'm going to do.
Super good, super good. That is the key. That is so important what you just said. You're just spot on. So we need to get the word out about that too, because there's so many people who, if you listen to people even talking about, that's, how it is when you get older, that kind of stuff. You're doing really well for your age. It's like, I don't think anyone would dare say that to me. They may get flattened. Good girl. Good girl. I really like that, Marianne. You're my kind of woman.
At least verbally, we'll put it that way. Because, yes.
Well, that's a good start.
Yeah, because that would be such an erroneous way to think about life and our existence. And I disagree with you. I think there's so much more in your book. I love it because every chapter, it really kind of breaks it down. So you've got like the road to power, power force, and it goes on and on. Then we get into book 2. And so I think I have time for one more question here. So when we look at book 2, why did
actually, before you go on, I would really like to say to our listeners that I'm giving away a free ebook at the moment, which is only about the power of the mind. It's called The Mental Laws, Understanding the Way Your Mind Works. And if you go, I just would like people to know that if they go in on my website, which is beamteam.com, BEAMTEAM.com, it says it on the front page of the website how you can get your free ebook. And this ebook is a really good introduction to all of the stuff that Marianne and I have been talking about on this show, understanding the way your mind works and how to use this power more wisely.
Well, that is fabulous, Barbara. And why don't you share your website for our listeners so they can connect with you and be part of your community?
The website is beamteam.com, www.beamteam.com. So you can go in there and it will tell you how to get this free ebook. But otherwise, all my books are available on Amazon and all the other online shops.
Sections. Okay. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara. It's been an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, The Road to Power. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.